Well, kia ora and welcome everyone to the launch of Edu's book, Maori Boy Atheist. I'm Hema Patterson, the President of the NZARH, and it's our pleasure to have you here, Edu, with your whānau today. Edu, I've read your book and certainly spoken about it many times, and I'm constantly reminded how important your book is to Māori and to our fellow cousins throughout the Pacific. When you feel alone, as you have mentioned, knowing that others are thinking like you and going through the same turbulence of finding what they do and don't believe in, a book like this is a lifesaver. Your book, Edu, will be a game changer for many, not only in Aotearoa, but through the Pacific. There are many theories why Māori took to religion with zeal when we were first colonised, and I've shared one of my thoughts with Edu, so he's lucky, I only shared one. Māori have an enormous amount of gods. We have one for every aspect of our lives, for the forest, the sea, the food, the wind, and I even think we've got one for the unfortunate looking, and so many more. My theory is that when Christians came to Aotearoa, it was an easy sell. The peddlers would say, hey, do we have something for you? You don't have to worry about all your gods. We have one that will cover everything. It's a lot easier, and we went for it, hook, line and sinker. But our times have changed. Māori are leaving religion quicker than any other nationality in New Zealand, and we're nearly at 50% Māori in the last census that ticked the no religion box. So it's very interesting how quickly we, as tangata whenua, are saying, no, I'm going to think for myself. So let me give you a little background on how the association became involved with Edu and his book. It was a conversation between Judy De Lawa, Nairi McCarthy and Max Wallace who spoke about Edu's book after the Humanist conference, which was held in Auckland in 2019, and how important they felt it was. I first read the draft of Māori Boy Atheist in Bali with my sister Nairi. Now picture this, sums us up beautifully. We're sunbathing on lounges by her son's pool. We've got a glass of wine at our side, the sun is shining, and I started to read it out loud to her. We were excited, it had nothing to do with the wine because we hadn't even got past one glass. But we could relate to what Edu was talking about his journey, his korero, his mihi, and for instance, when I heard him say that he made the decision not to stand in a marae when karakia was said. Now for one that's in and out of maraes, I've got to tell you that takes balls. And believe me, to continue to take that stance, all strength to you, Edu. So what Nairi and I read was Edu's journey was similar to ours, and being an atheist, as Edu mentioned in his book, is not spoken about in Māoridom. And a lot of our whānau considered us, like his, a little bit odd and a little bit out there. And when my sister and I would arrive, you could hear, oh, there goes the aunties. So Nairi and I decided then that we would support Edu in any way we could. And with the help of many others, here we are today. So a few thanks are called for. Edu, you first, that you sat and put your thoughts and ideas on paper to share with others. To the Humanist Trust who supported us financially, Alan Wild, our printer, who supported us with time and costs, and the councillors of our association. Special mention of to Mark Honeychurch and Judy, to Max and Meg Wallace. It was actually Max on one of his journeys from Australia, he lives in Australia back here, that got the ball rolling. He approached the association to ask us to support Edu in the printing of Māori Boy Atheist, and it made sense to me, and this is why. Max and Meg Wallace had been involved in the Pacific Islands for many years, and in particular Fiji. They had supported atheists throughout the islands, visiting, writing to the local papers, and sometimes getting a few articles printed, which is very difficult if you're speaking against religion. Some of Max and Meg's work was done underground because of the consequences the Fijians would face if they were found out. I, along with Nairi, Max and Meg, flew to Fiji to open the first Pacific Islands Secular Association conference. And after listening to the stories of the Fijians and their struggles of rejection of religion and how they had to keep it under wraps as they could lose their jobs, they and their families alienated from their villages and more, we saw Eru's book as a lifeline to them. I'm happy to tell you that we have distributed books throughout the Pacific Islands into French Polynesia, Tahiti and New Caledonia. Copies have been sent to Germany to be included in the German Writers' Festival. Unfortunately, we were too late to get into the Auckland Writers' Festival. I found out you've got to be 12 to 18 months ahead, and they have a committee that reads and decides what will go through. But Eru will be there next year. 118 copies have been posted to members of Parliament, with the Maori copy being sent to the Maori MPs and Pacific Island MPs. Eru's books have been sent to libraries throughout New Zealand and Australia. It has been heartening, I have to tell you, that we have received emails thanking us for the English copy, but in particular, the Maori copy. In a point of interest, we're on our second run of the Maori version, and as of last Tuesday, we have asked our printer for another run of the English version. Eru's journey to becoming an atheist and the work he has put into his final decision came by way of many religions. He writes of Ratna, Ringatu, Open Brethren, the Church of Latter-day Saints, and his unfortunate time with Barry Smith, evangelist, conspiracy theorist, and cult leader. Eru writes that Barry Smith connected biblical prophecies of impending doom and gloom to the current world events, and unknown to him, this was the beginning of him being led down a path of misery and fear that would take him years to recover. It was a that minister? Presbyterian minister, along with others who influenced Eru, which helped him to make his final decision to move away from religion. Eru's book takes you through his experiences from his childhood to today, and it's a good read. Eru mentions in his book feeling alone with his thoughts of rejecting deities and not knowing another Māori who thought the same. Eru. I know this book will be a lifeline to our cousins in the islands, and more importantly, it will signal they are not alone. So to quote Eru, I'm sure there are Māori, Polynesian, Melanesian and Aboriginal atheists, but there are not many outspoken ones. I hope that by reading my story, they and others further afield will be able to glean some inspiration from the story and write about, or at least talk to others about their atheism. In conclusion, Eru, we know that you've shone a light for our cousins in the Pacific and beyond. So on behalf of the NZARH, it is a pleasure to have been part of your journey. So the man of the moment, Eru, Hiko-Tahuri. Haere mai, e tū.
Kia ora rā tātou. Me pēnei pia te kōrero. Kia tīmatau I taku reo tuatai, te reo Māori, o te me koeni te wāhi haumaru kia. Ka tika hoki ngā mihi, kia rātou ngā rātou au I poipoi. Ia, nei rotu ngā mahi ne, e nui ana, kia rātou. O te rā ki taku I whānau e noho aki ne.
Kia ora.
O rātou taku tuara. So, yeah, just hearing all that is a little bit overwhelming, because being someone's beacon is kind of like that's scary, right? You know, I didn't start writing to do that. I started writing for me. There are a couple of reasons, I guess, I wrote this book. First, it was for me to sort out a place where I could sort out my own thinking. And yeah, so I just started writing, and knowing that in the mid-90s there was no one talking about these subjects, no one saying anything in my community, and I looked around, I searched everywhere, and the only thing I could find at the time were people like Dan Mihaka, famous for throwing his butt to the Queen, talking openly about rejecting Christianity. And that was sort of the first thing, and his particular disdain for the hymn Tamangako Māori, the son of the graceful heart, sort of, is a loose translation. It was one of the famous hymns. And we got it from our area with sort of a funeral song, Tangi's. And but it's a very Christian song, and his disdain for that made me start thinking. Yeah, so I was looking around for someone who looked like me and was thinking like me, and there was nothing. And that was scary and painful, and I didn't know where I could turn, because the people I had around me at the time were very pro-Maori, but some of them were pro-religion, and some of them were pro-Maori spirituality, but none of them were atheist. And yeah, so it was particularly difficult. So I just fought through all the stuff, and if you read the book, you'll see I talk about all the religious influences we had in our life. There were many, like many Māori families, and there are stories of among Māori families, you know, they'll baptise half the family Catholic, half of them will be Anglican, some of them will be Presbyterian, to cover the bases, to make sure at least someone gets there. I'm pretty sure that's what they do, they sort of hedge their bets. Or, you know, you go live with that auntie and she's Presbyterian, so you'll be Presbyterian. And that's sort of the way it worked in Māori families. And yeah. And I have to say, my scepticism and my sort of thing, I'm pretty sure comes from our mother. She is still to this day very, very hard lady. But very, you know, one of her favourite sayings to me, like, and I use it all the time, is she said to me, she used to say to us as kids, don't let people baffle you with bullshit. It was one of her favourite sayings to us.
Good advice.
And that's always been ringing in the back of my head. And so with that sort of thing, and then one time I think I was about 6, and we were all about to be baptised into the Mormon church. It was like days away. And then a few days before, my mother said, it's not going to happen. We're not doing that. And I asked her why. And she said she prayed and prayed and prayed, and it didn't work. You know, it just didn't feel right or something. And okay. So that was a narrow escape for us, I think. I talk about in the lead up in the book, I talk about being 6 years old and having these Mormon elders haranguing us. Are you ready to blah, blah, blah? I was like 6 years old, I'm going, yes. And being terrified. So those stories are in the book, but yeah, I wanted to write my story, put it out there for a couple of reasons, mostly so that when I die, people don't lie about me. And say, you know, he loved God, because I've seen it happen. I attended a friend's funeral that we used to get parties with. We used to go out and drunk and crazy, and then they had their funeral, and they lied and said she loved her church, and she was at church every Sunday. No, she wasn't. She was at the parties with us. We knew it. Everyone knew it. But no one said anything. And that was the first funeral service I ever walked out of. I was so angry because they lied about my friend. So I didn't want people lying to my kids. You know that that was part of the reason I wrote the book. And then the other reason was because, yeah, I just needed a place to sort out my own thinking, and that's how I came to it. And so I had myself away for a couple of long weekends up at Waikato, and just spent the time writing, sorted it all out later. And in 2015, I just chucked a self-published ebook onto the internet. And so it would be there up for people to find if they were ever looking. There was no promotion, there was no anything. And somehow somebody from Humanist New Zealand in Wellington found it and contacted me. And next minute I was a speaker at the Humanist conference here in Auckland. It was terrifying me. And then from there, this published version of the book came, and it's, I have to say, I am still quite sort of puzzled and bemused by the fact someone even bothered. This is not false humility, it's completely true. It's just my story, you know, and so, yeah, it's sort of, it's a real place to be. But I am very proud of the book. I'm very proud of the fact that the Maori version was written by me as well. I didn't get anyone else to do it, partly because all the licensed translators of Maori I know are all religious. And I didn't know whether I should trust them or not. I could have got them to do it for free because they're old friends, but I do know, and that yeah, I didn't know if I wanted to trust my story to them, so I did it myself in the end. Yeah, I'm very proud of that too. But to see it in French is crazy, right? What? Why would it be in French? I don't speak French. But yeah. So I don't really know what else to say other than thanks to your association, to our friends in Australia, to Max and Megan, their association, for all the help and support they've provided to Maori Church. And Judy, especially to you, putting up with me, emailing me all the time about what's going on. Thank you. But particularly to everyone here. It's very, very, very frightening, and very humbling, and thank you. Yeah, so I don't want to hold us up for too long.
Well, perhaps we can have a bit of a Q&A.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. So, are there any questions or thoughts? Or?
Kia ora. Kia ora. So whakaaro, my name's Peter. 50% we've heard of the Maori tick the no religion box, but that's not demonstrated when you go to the Maori and you find that custom actually takes over.
Yeah.
And many people are practicing a religious etiquette, maybe without believing it that much. What I'd like to ask you is what is left for Maori spirituality once you've entered into the atheistic realm at this point?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and actually I've been thinking about that particularly over the last week, because a very close friend of mine passed away last weekend, and I attended his funeral. And I sat there thinking about it, and here I am participating in the ritual, but not the religion. And I'm going, how is this working? But then over the week I've been thinking about it, and you know what? It's the fact that it's a physical ritual to go through. It's comforting. And it's the ritual that I grew up with. It's not the belief anymore for me. It's the fact that I get to, it's actually the cultural thing. I get to go to them and I get to express my grief at the loss of my friend in a way that feels comfortable to me. And so it's that cultural part that I participate in, and I let the religious stuff be white noise in the background, because that's sort of what it is. And to be honest, to most of us, I think that's what it is. But it's that comfortable cultural practice and ritual that we go through at a tangi that definitely, I know, makes me feel better. Because we go from the beginning, we take them on the marae, we get to speak, we get to talk about our feelings. And we get to cry publicly for our friend, or our relation, or our mother, or our auntie, or whoever it is. And so we get to express that. And then over the 3 days, or 4 days, or how long it takes, you have other people coming in and they're expressing their grief together. And that allows us to be grieving. And by the end of it, well, lots of people get quite horrified, but we're sitting around joking about this person who's in the coffin. And we make fun of them. And we like tell all the funny stories that they didn't want to tell. And that kind of stuff. And so it's like a really good way to get to the feeling okay with it. Yeah. And from then you get to actually see them, you put them in the ground yourself and you throw the dirt on the coffin. And that makes it fun. And you go, yeah, okay, I've been through this journey. And so the cultural practice for me is the part that I go for. And it's not so much the talking and the religion, but the different having this ritual that I grew up with and participating in is what provides the comfort. Yeah, because really words are just words in the end. For me, for that particular stuff, yeah. And yeah, just through that last funeral, I've just come to that. Because I was wondering, why am I still doing this? And then I realised it's that ritual, that comfort, and the need for ritual, I think, is something quite universal in a way. And yeah. So it's that, yeah, so that would be, I hope that sort of answers.
You talk about cultural comfort and the comfort in rituals and the sort of closure and the ending. So is your next book going to be The Atheist's Ritual?
Well done. And I want to say yes. But it probably will be something like that. So it'll be something like, because I have been thinking about it, there are a ritual without the nonsense. Some kind of, yeah.
You can't say.
Oh, I can say whatever I like. That's one thing you'll find out, that I just say what I feel with it.
You know, Edu, part of that ritual is, now our gods are mythical, so we know, we know they're not true, but I'll tell you what, when I go fishing, the first fish goes back to Tagalog. Go and figure, that's what we're talking about, that cultural and that comfort. Religious people have lots of comfort because they belong to a community, they meet all the time, they do things together. Well, the same is for other nationalities. I feel comfort. I know a lot of you know my sister, Maori McCarthy. She's sitting on the Hiko-Tahuri tree in the Matariki star cluster. Is that true? No. But I love that story and it gives me great comfort. That's where my sister is. Even though I know that Kawachuchi's, she's gone,
And while we're on the subject of no,
Yes.
you'll see if you read the book, the dedication to no. Because she was the first Maori I ever saw talking about it publicly. And it was just a short, small 15-minute video I found on YouTube, probably on the Rationalist site, of Nairi talking. And I thought, wow, cool. And next minute, through this weird journey, I ended up meeting her at that conference. And then it was like an instant connection. It was weird, but it was cool too. There was this instant connection of, she felt like the auntie that I never had. And so she became very, very important to me. And that's why I dedicated the book to her. Because she was my leading light, in a way. She was the first one I found outside of my community that spoke openly about being an atheist and being Maori. And so, yeah, it meant a lot to me, and I was glad that she got to see that I dedicated the book to her. And that was the reason. Simply because she was the first one. And then when I met her, she was exactly how I thought she was going to be. Like, wow, you really are that person. But yeah, she was great, and we had a few conversations over Facebook and Messenger and things, and she was always very, very supportive and caring, and that was important to me, myself, and to Hinari, who was the other speaker at the conference. We talked about her one night saying, yeah, it's really nice having an auntie in the kaupapa, because she felt like it, you know, and it was cool. So yeah, that's why I dedicated the book to Nairi. One of the things I'm real careful about is I try not to talk about my family too much, because I don't want them copping flack for what I say, because I know what I see people get offended about, and I don't want them copping flack in our community. Yeah, so I don't talk about too much of my family or everything to me. My wife has been so supportive. My sons, who I'm so proud of now, growing up and getting out in the world, and very opinionated themselves, which is cool.
Nice.
It's a little bit difficult being a parent of opinionated. Some of you might know, but yeah, they're awesome kids, and they've got awesome support in their family, their aunties, who are just amazing as well. But yeah, so I just want to end off. If there aren't any more questions, oh, there are more. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, it's so good the book's out, and it's regarding Nairi. She just said everything. Don't worry about saying anything. You know, Nairi just said it like it was, you know, and she just held her head up and just said it. You know, she just had that ability.
Yeah.
And that's not just the Maori side of things. It was also, you know, on the white side, or what you call it, you know, non-Maori. And everyone respected her for that.
Yep.
Just saying it like it was. You know? That's why she's so important to us.
So I think Maori Language Week's coming up soon, and I think I saw on social media Whitaker's renamed or translated to Chocolate Heart, right? And it was a bit of a fuss, but there was a little bit of an article where they're like the history of adoption of Maori language and normal culture, and they, like 30 years ago, it was offensive for someone at work to pick up the phone and say kia ora.
Yeah.
And it's obviously there's been from my point of view, a healthy adoption of Māori, and it's a bit more normalised.
Yeah.
How's that been in terms of, you know, the Māori atheist in the last few decades? Is it still just as awkward now as it was 23 years ago? Is it, I mean, 50% of people from the census say they're not religious, but is it still awkward, or?
No, I don't think it's awkward. Which I don't particularly care what people think. I don't think it's awkward. Actually, it's getting easier, because the more public I've been, the more hushed conversations I have with people. And they say, good on you for writing that book. But you know, and you see them at the next to you. And there's a lot of that, but there has been a lot of interest. Like I was even lucky enough to get on TV and be talking about that, which was kind of
That
surreal.
was great. Were you interviewed by Graham Hill?
No, yes I was, yes.
Yeah. How did that go? You
Today FM was good. Yeah, so Graham Hill contacted me a couple of weeks ago. Said he wanted to do an interview for Today FM. That was cool. It was a really simple one. Yeah, that's nice having a friendly interview with that.
Yeah,
So it was good.
true. He is a member of the association.
Yeah, so that was nice. And I've had a couple of conversations amongst with other Māori broadcasters about what I don't believe, because they want to say what I do believe, and I just tell them that's not what I don't believe. That's what I don't believe in. Yeah. But yeah, and so I think people are starting to talk about it more, which is good. Yeah. And I guess it's when people have religious questions and one of them, they tend to contact me now, because they know I'm the person they'll get a straight answer from. And it's never the answer they want, because it's sort of like, well, how can I do that and this? And you know, no, you can't, you've got to go, well, you know, it's that sort of thing. Yeah, I think it's changed quite a lot. And it was never really, in the Māori community, was never really big on excluding people anyway. If you had fringe beliefs like mine, you were sort of just left out of the conversation rather than ostracised. You know, there wasn't ever planned, I don't think, maliciously, but it was more like, okay, he's going to make us uncomfortable, so we'll go somewhere else. Yeah, yeah, people in our own community I just know who I am now. Now they think it's funny when I'm at a hui to ask me to do the karakia. And you know, yeah, they get a kick out of that because, oh yeah, that's sure, that's funny. Well, yeah, I usually just say no, thank you. On the odd occasion I've done things, but in a sort of using secular language but sounding spiritual. Because you can do that in Maori, it's really cool. You can have some fun, so I do. Because the thing is too, not all Maori speak Maori. And yet they all want to have karakia in Maori. So they don't even know what to say. And yeah, you can do things your own way. Yeah, and I can hear it now. If they could hear me now. Yeah. Any more questions, comments?
Could I just ask about karakia?
Yep.
In my ignorance, two-part question. Are they usually read ad hoc, like a lot of fundamentalist Christians can do? They're doing a blessing or something and they just come out with whatever comes out. Or are they usually standard sort of incantations, you call them in your book?
Yeah.
Or, and are they always Christian? Or can they be more to do with the Maori tradition?
Yeah. So, yeah, it depends on, the word karakia has really been used by Christianity. So when you say karakia, it's mostly Christian prayer. You know, and they've written in books and they use the prayer books too. And but there is a growing in the Maori community. I think I've seen growing more people are tending to grab sort of traditional Maori karakia, which then now refer to the Maori gods, things like that. But again, the ones that I do that I make them up. Using the literary tradition, but not using supernatural things. So if you look in the Mōteatea, there's some beautiful words that refer to natural processes. Like, for example, if I was to do a karakia for the beginning of a hui, I would say things like, "When maitara te rā I te pai," so the sun has come over the horizon, the early morning birds are singing, and it's the beginning of a new day. And you know, we hope for the best for the day, kind of, for a quick translation of what I would do, rather than, you know, that. Because doing that makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, so mostly you'll, they're Christian. There is an emergence of traditional karakia. And if you watch the Matariki thing that was on TV, and they had all those flash young Māoris in their suits saying they splash traditional Māori karakia. A lot of that, there's more of that coming now and growing. And I noticed some of those people are now writing more secular karakia the way that I do it, which is cool, I think. Because we get to keep the tradition in place. And which is part of the ritual I was talking about earlier. But we leave the stuff that we don't want behind. But we keep the actual act of the ritual in place without polluting it with the Christian or supernatural.
That's the same for the Christian, you know, the European people in New Zealand, because, you know, yeah, well, just being in school, I'm 60 now, but being in school, you know, having to stand up for the bloody national anthem, you know, which is religious, you know, and I used to stay seated. How did I get the grief, you know? But they're not doing it as much now, you know, so
Yeah.
it all changes, which is better, and if they might stand just to honour somebody, but, you know, sometimes, but now they're not really honouring gods, and,
Yeah.
which is quite good, but it's a slow process because, you know, like the Muslims seem to have gone backwards, but in time, overseas.
Yeah.
Same as what we've done with Christmas. You would de-spiritualise it, it's just
Yeah.
the family and presents and all that. It's
Yeah.
not about baby Jesus.
Pie.
Yeah, it's about the food product. Yeah. You might be able to tell. Cool, any more? Cool, that looks like a no. Thank you.